By EMPOCA, we are doing so many outdoor programs, and sometimes people just think it's a simple walk in the woods, and actually, it's more than a simple walk in the woods. Nature is a fuel for us to see what we are, to see our potential.
Hey folks, thanks for tuning in to the latest episode of the Ecosystem Member Podcast. Our guest for this episode is Anthony Owosekun, founder of EMPOCA, the only organization in Europe that connects Black kids and teens with nature. On the episode, we talk about how Anthony's experience in the Boy Scouts in Northern Germany influenced his connection with nature and drove him to start EMPOCA, how creating safe spaces to help children connect to nature can help cultivate key life skills like self-reliance, confidence, and leadership qualities, and how forming that positive connection with nature early on can help ensure that they'll want to act to protect it well into the future. The work EMPOCA is doing is really important to make sure outdoor spaces feel welcoming for everyone. As we discussed a few episodes ago with Keme Nzerem, co-founder of Opening Up the Outdoors, this isn't about exclusion. It's about making sure all people feel safe in outdoor spaces, especially those people who have historically felt unwelcome. Huge thanks to Anthony for engaging in such an open and honest conversation, especially since he was generous enough to conduct the interview in English rather than his native tongue German, of which I have not studied since I graduated from high school far too many years ago. We did experience a few small audio issues, so please bear with us. This conversation is an important one, and EMPOCA is an organization worthy of your support. Make sure to visit their website at empoca.org. And yes, there is an English version of the website for those of you who, like me, are not as skilled as our multilingual friends. Without further delay, here's the latest episode of the Ecosystem Member Podcast with Anthony Owosekun, founder of EMPOCA. We always ask our guests the same first question. How do you describe and think about your relationship with nature?
Yeah, my relationship with nature is rooted in my childhood when I was a Boy Scout in the northern part of Germany. So I've always been a nature enthusiast. And then keep on going on the educational field as an experiential educator. I'm using the experience in nature in my work with young people as a social worker and also as an educator to feel empowered and also to see the huge potential which is within us. Nature is a fuel for us to see what we are, to see our potential.
And just for some context for our listeners, probably about half our listeners are in the U.S. I was a scout when I was a kid. What does being a scout in northern Germany look like?
Yes, it was in the 90s when I was a Boy Scout in the northern part of Germany, and our activities are diverse from camps in the summer and learning how to name the stars, working with material, also with wood, of course. And it's actually this feeling of belonging to a small group, which is really motivating. So it's really fun to be a Boy Scout and also to learn how to create things with your own hand. So this is what I really love about that time. Like I can create things with my own hand.
That's awesome. And in Texas, we had this thing called the Pinewood Derby when we were in the Scouts, where we created our own little car and raced them out of wood. I imagine in Germany, that might look a little bit different. Did you have any sort of annual activities like that you used to engage in?
Yeah, this is a very good question because I only participate in an annual event. It was when I was in the third grade. I participate in a huge Boy Scout camp. And this was actually the first and last time I participated in it because I didn't felt this belonging on that event because there were so many groups, so many new people, and not only that, I was also the only black person there, so I didn't see myself in the staff and the other children, and also felt a bit excluded. So that's why I actually quit then the Boy Scout idea or being a Boy Scout further because I experienced this event and it was for me a really life-changing moment that like, okay, I think I have to go to another place.
Yeah, and speaking of life-changing, I mean, that's kind of a great way to set up the next question. You're the founder and the CEO of EMPOCA, which works to connect Black youth with the outdoors, hoping to change some of the situations like you experienced where you're the only Black person at this big Boy Scout event. So can you share sort of how that experience in nature and part of the Scouts, but also being an educator and a social worker, how that led to the creation of EMPOCA?
This experience I had was life-changing. I just noticed there's a lack of people looking like me in outdoor spaces. So then I just try to organize whenever I can events for young people. And I was very fortunate. I was always a person who is really engaging with young people. It's really easy for me to engage with them because I just see them as equal as adults. So it's very easy to engage with young people if you just show them the respect they deserve. And then on these occasions where we just go to nature, it's having a walk in the park, organizing campings on my own for young people of color. And then as an educator, I started to use nature-based learning as a tool for especially disadvantaged kids from different communities.
That's awesome. And there's 3 pillars of EMPOCA. So you've got youth empowerment, which you've talked a little bit about how you relate to them through respect. You've also got mental health, which I think is really interesting, especially when it comes to some of the research around time and nature being great for people of all ages, really. And then the environmentalism part. Can you talk about what those 3 pillars are, how they work together, and how they make up the programming and events that you put together as part of EMPOCA?
By poker, we are doing so many outdoor programs, and sometimes people just think it's a simple walk in the woods. And actually, it's more than a simple walk in the woods, it's a comprehensive program. And so, these pillars, the 3 pillars you mentioned, youth empowerment, that means specifically we equip Black children with life skills that cultivate self reliance, confidence, and leadership qualities. This is our grounding for everyone entering our program. It's about them. It's about them to rise, them to see their full potential. And the second pillar is about promoting physical and mental health. As you mentioned, this is a really huge issue also here in Germany, and especially for kids from disadvantaged communities, and in this case, for Black kids who are not really, having the access to places of recreation. It's really important for us to focus on health. And the last pillar is environmentalism. That means helping kids recognize their place within our larger ecosystem and inspire a commitment to the future by them. So it's really, really important to understand if you don't see yourself or if you don't have contact in nature, then it's really hard for you to protect nature or to understand the need to take action.
Yeah, I think that idea, the more people that feel like they have a relationship or an understanding or a connection with nature, the more likely they are to take action. And I think it's really interesting because I was reading that your organization runs the sole nature camp for Black children in Europe, which is kind of shocking. What drove you to really get something like this off the ground? Because I read that you faced a little bit of backlash as well. How did you think about pushing forward and making sure that this was something that was offered to Black children in Germany?
Yes, thank you for this question because it's actually one of the biggest motivation of mine when I experienced this Boy Scout camp, as I said in the introduction, that I want to feel a kind of belonging when I'm outside. And this is what actually motivates me every day. In addition to that, I needed some kind of proof like it's possible. So this possibility, like there are this kind of organizations in the US, especially Auto Afro by Remap was my biggest inspiration. I just saw like it's possible. It's possible to create organizations who are the entry point for Black people and also for people of color or other communities who are disadvantaged to just get the entry point for them to feel belonging in a safer space, because it's really important to have this step before thinking about inclusive access. So this is what I really love to see. Like, okay, there are examples out there. So if Rumap in the US was able to found Outer Afro, so it's also possible to do it in Germany. And this was actually not the right conclusion, because the situation in the US in society is different from Germany when we talk about racism. And awareness of racism in Germany is increasing bit by bit, but it's not very implemented in the society, like talking about it, or and also the history of dealing with racism is not as long as like in the US. So that's why this backlash I experienced last year after giving an interview was kind of a wake-up call for me to understand it's important to do the work, but it's also important to have enough supporters, like to have people, to have companies, brands who also want to support this mission. So creating like spaces like EMPOCA as an empowerment entry point for young Black people means if we get the people on board who are looking for more diversity in the outdoors, then we're working on the same goal at the end.
And I think what was really interesting reading some of your response to that was that it's not about excluding anyone. It's more about the fact that we need to create a space of belonging, especially amongst young people, so they feel comfortable in these spaces. And then as they grow, they'll be able to kind of venture out through that empowerment they've experienced with that relationship with nature. It seemed like people were taking it the wrong way of like it's trying to exclude anyone, but actually it was just trying to bring people in a way that gives them an opportunity to participate in a way that they feel safe and comfortable, right?
Yes, definitely. It's about safety, as you mentioned it, and well-being if you want to be outside for everyone. So it is something which is not common in Black communities. I can only speak for not only my experiences, but also the parents, white or Black parents or of color parents from our kids telling us the same stories. Like it's very hard for them to find a place of belonging in nature, because the white gaze being outside as only or few non-white people, it's also a very stressful experience. So for young people, their perception is always very self-focused. Like when anything happens, it's always their fault or it's because they've done something. So if I go to the outdoors and I had a bad experience, the conclusion is, okay, maybe it's not good to go outdoors, or maybe it's my fault that I am there in the outdoors. So on the end, it's not going to be a positive connection with nature. So it's not like white people want to exclude Black people or Black people want to exclude white people. It's not this narrative. It's just about like we are facing the effects of structural and historical racism, which is now in our societies seen in this affects, like, okay, some people or some communities have less access than other communities, and if you all want to have a beautiful, democratic, and peaceful society, then we have to take different kind of actions. So this empowerment action, what we are taking, is what we experience is the best way for people to feel belonging. And then when they got older, like I am right now, I'm like 42 years old, and I also love to go to nature, despite of any stress situations I'm still experiencing as a Black man. But it's still a place you can find peace and you can find clarity.
That's beautiful and super inspiring. I think it takes a lot of courage in a lot of ways to continue to go out in these spaces that you find so much enrichment from, even if they aren't always the most inclusive. And I really admire the work you're doing there. So as we think about the future of Impoca, what does your vision look like? Like 10 years from now, if I talk to you about the organization, what do you hope has happened or what does it look like?
Yes, 10 years from now, Empoca will be a huge organization connecting kids and teenagers worldwide with nature, with other communities from different countries, and also having the regularly programs. That means outdoor camps with the skills they need for becoming nature leaders. And of course, this can also be motivation for everyone to support our work, because without support, we cannot achieve this vision.